Andrew and I have an experience that really ties this in with customer discovery. And this is really where this quote hits the hardest. And for us, so we had a venture this past summer, and it was going well. We were licensing a product from the Air Force, and we were working with inventors, and we were not getting to the customer discovery part. We were doing the feasibility study. We were doing a lot of product work, a lot of online research, making sure the patents and everything lined up. But it took us a while to get to the customer discovery. And when we got there, we were extremely disappointed because we had to end the business because of what we found out. And we'll touch on all of that more later, why this is probably the most important thing to take away from this whole series, because this is where most of your ideas will get filtered out if they are not feasible. And I'll let Andrew take it.
Cool. So, speaking of filters, here's an upside down triangle. So all of you have already came up with your ideas. Hopefully you brought them with you today from the previous venture creation workshop. And assuming that you came up with those ideas, they came from somewhere. So you looked at some competitors, you identified some gap in the marketplace, and in that you've completed the second step of this, which is a quick feasibility study. Otherwise, you wouldn't have brought them here today with you. So what we're going to do now is get into the actual feasibility analysis. We're beginning this stage of testing out your product. And there's really 4 parts to a feasibility analysis. You have product, industry, market, and competitors, team, or like your management team, and the financial aspects to it. So those are your 4 parts. We're going to be covering all of those throughout the year. But today we're talking about customer discovery, which is in the product portion of the feasibility analysis. So customer discovery, what does that mean? It sounds like just a strange term. Well, it's a customer-centric scientific process that puts evidence behind an assumed product market fit. So again, pretty long and involved, but what you're trying to do is hypothesis and test. So you're assuming that people will actually buy the product that you've invented or innovated, but you don't know that people actually buy it. So the point of customer discovery is to actually go out to those people who you've identified and ask them, will you buy this? And so that's, in a nutshell, what this is. You're essentially being a business scientist. And why is this important? Well, Vince Lewis, our advisor, came in a couple weeks ago or a month ago and said the number one reason why startups fail is lack of paying customers. And this is droned into our heads in the entrepreneur program here. And that's just simply it. I mean, you can look everywhere. The research is out. The reason why most startups fail is because they don't have a market that is willing to pay for their product. So either it's not big enough, the product that you design didn't meet the customer needs. So this happens a lot with engineers where they get super excited about a product because they're like into features and building and stuff like that, but they never go out and they actually ask the customer, do you want this? And that's exactly what happened with our venture. They loaded up with all this cool stuff and got $500,000 of investment out of the way, and they came up with something that couldn't be sold. So had they have done the customer discovery, they wouldn't have had to lose that money. So maybe it costs too much to make, so where at the price point that you're trying to sell it at, the customer doesn't want to buy it, or it's just not the right mix of features and benefits that the customer is looking for. Another reason it could fail is that the customer sees the pain that you're trying to solve is not as big as you think it is. So, I can't think of an example, but like if you're trying to solve a pain and it's not really that painful for them, or it's not high on their priorities to actually solve this problem, they're not going to buy it. I mean, you could think about that logically. So, kind of in a nutshell, customer discovery helps you quickly tell whether or not your product will be successful or what changes are needed to make it successful. And I think that second one is important because if we go back to that funnel, this process is just a big cycle. You're going to be going back and forth, talking to customers, saying, do you like this feature? Do you not like? What don't you like? Et cetera. And you're going to be fine-tuning this and building it exactly for what they want. That's the whole point of this. So that's the only way you can learn is through customer discovery. So to recap, you need to prove that the problem you're solving or pain you're relieving exists, and you can do this through just market research, like looking up statistics, like let's say you're trying to solve some disease with a new device or something like that, medical technology. You can look up how many people have this disease, how much money it costs for treatment, and the kind of money that you'll save the patients or something like that. That it causes the customer enough pain that they would be willing to pay whatever you think it's going to cost, and that it's a high priority to them. So with that, do we have any questions about customer discovery? So that's kind of the first part of it. So now you all know what it is, right? Okay. So can anyone answer that question? Yeah, that's right. So nobody wants to buy your stuff. So now that we have our idea, who is actually going to buy this thing? And you probably have a pretty good idea in your head of who might buy it. But one method that we can use to help you come up with more customers is something called a market fishbone. And I learned of this through my different entrepreneurship classes, and I think it's just a really great tool that Josh and I have actually used in our own business to generate ideas. And so how it works is it's called a market fishbone because it looks like a fish, like skeleton, which is kind of weird. But like at the back fin, you have your key attributes, which you think in your head, you're like, this is going to be game changing. So for this one, it was like a robotics tool in one of my classes. So you have those key attributes, which are driving benefits in these different industries. So the big main lines are the different industries, and then you can go in deeper, and within those industries there are different uses. So for example, let's say manufacturing. So this robot, we could go into the manufacturing industry with it. Well, let's dig deeper. We can do assembly, we can do palletizing, we can do painting, we can do all kinds of stuff within this one industry. So you can see how you can get pretty big with this, and then over time, you'll just start eliminating these one by one. And so this is the workshop part. So does everyone have paper or a pencil? Does anyone not have paper? Raise your hand.
All good? Yeah, so again, at this point in the workshop, we want to give you guys the wheel and start jotting down some of the ideas. So first off, some of your key attributes. So for example, say you are bringing a new phone into the market and it has a lot better of a camera than the other phones on the current market. Like that would be a key attribute. Or the price could be a key attribute, something like that. And then generate some of the large industries that might be interested in your product. So if we refer back to this fishbone, maybe you are interested in licensing some form of software to an accounting firm that increases the efficiency in sorting its financial statements, or you want to go into manufacturing with your product or education. So think about some of the industries that your product might fit in. And then if you can narrow it down to like one or two, and then write as many potential uses for it. So again, those are going to be the smaller little branches off these fins. So like Andrew was saying, assembly, palletizing, that type of thing. So we're going to give you guys about 5 minutes. Andrew and Josh and maybe Amy can walk around and kind of chat with you guys and see what you guys are thinking, and we'll talk with each other in a second. Cool.
So now that we have our wonderful market fishbones and the industries that you've identified and the potential uses within those industries, now it's time to start identifying the customers and experts in those industries. And I know this topic is called customer discovery, but it's also really important that you talk to experts. And I know that Josh, my business partner, can attest to that too, because a lot of the really good meat that we got through these interviews and stuff came through talking to experts, not necessarily our customers. So customers are going to tell you what they like about your product, what they don't like, what price they're willing to pay, how likely they'd be to purchase. So they're a great wealth of information for a lot of different reasons. And experts are going to look at it from a technical perspective. So, these are industry people who have been in there for a long time, and they know all the nuances, all the trends, this and that. Why is it going to be hard for you to do this? What challenges are you going to run into with production or scaling the venture, or just general tips for navigating the industry? So these people are a wealth of information. So you want to have both sides. You want to talk to customers and industry people. And they're both necessary to inform, and again, just getting closer to that product market fit. So next we're going to be creating something called a customer profile. And if you've taken marketing classes, this should look somewhat familiar to you. And there's some of you who are doing B2B, business to business, and there's some of you who are doing business to consumer. So this is the first distinction that we need to make, is between B2B and B2C. And so in this customer profile, you're going to include things like, go ahead.
How many of you are business to consumer for your ideas right now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Business to business.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
And was yours? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're even. So this is going to include things like demographics, geographics, and behavior and psychographics. So I think an important one here is the behavior and psychographics. If you're going for consumers, like, what do these people do in their free time? What are their interests? What are their beliefs? This is all really valuable information. And demographics important too, but from the B2B side, you have something called firmographics. So similar to demographics, you're describing the firm. So things like, what industry are they in? How big are they? What customers do they have? Things like that. And then geographics is the same, and then lastly, business needs. So what are you solving for them? Are you cutting costs? Are you creating efficiencies? And it's also important, as I'll touch on the next slide, to determine who the true decision maker is. And this is a problem that I ran into my venture, which is it took me almost a month to figure out who really is going to be the person who's buying my product. I thought it was going to be one person, and then I thought it was going to be another one. And then after talking to all these people, 10, 15, 20 people, they're like, actually, this is the real person who's going to be your decision maker. And that's going to determine who you're going to be selling to. So it's very important that you figure out who that is and be asking them questions. So that's my tip there. And then we're not going to do this today, but work on creating an actual list of experts and customers. So ways to do this are LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is an incredible resource. You can search anyone in the entire world by company, by industry, by job title, by UD, if you want to talk to someone from UD. Working through your professional network. So a lot of you are freshmen, and this is a good incentive to start having you build up your network, because this is where most of this, growth in entrepreneurship happens, is just by knowing people. Because if you, let's say you guys are working in recycling, stuff like that with different materials, if you can talk to someone and have a good network with that, which you can build up with LinkedIn, it's going to make this a lot easier for you. And then lastly, family and friends. So, if you have a business family, like if your parents are entrepreneurs or business people, they're going to be able to help you out a lot with this. You'd be surprised what you can find. So, there you go.
Again, so this is a part where we want to give you guys some time to think about what Andrew just said, digest it, and see how that can apply to your own business ideas. So first thing we want you guys to do is, if you kind of already had it, try to actually get it down to one industry, the idea of your business that you have, and build a customer profile about it. So some of the characteristics, again, firmographics are to businesses what demographics are to people. So like Andrew was saying, what type of customers these businesses have if you're trying to do B2B. And then the geographics of it, and then some of the psychographics, the behaviors, desires, the tendencies of the customers you're trying to cater to. So we're going to give you guys about 5 minutes. Again, we'll be walking around, and let us know if you have any questions.
So now you have all these people picked out. It's time to execute. So this is the last part of this. And I think the point I want to drive home here is, once you get these interviews and things that you're trying to meet with these people, asking the right questions is going to be key. And this is just something you'll pick up as you go along when you have more meetings and talking to professional people. You figure out how to ask the right kind of questions. So they're going to be different for experts, and they're going to be different for your customers because you're trying to get different things out of them. I mean, you could ask the experts, do you think that the customer will buy this? But I don't think that would be advantageous for you. So you're going to want to tailor them differently. And then be as specific as you can. Just like we're trying to be specific with who we're targeting, we should be very specific with our questioning and ask open-ended questions where it's not just a yes or no. I mean, those are good to throw those in there, but you want to have them talk freely so that you can get as much information out of them as you can. Another tip, ask for referrals. So especially if you have if it's someone in your network or a friend or family member, they're going to be very open to, working with you and wanting to see you succeed. And additionally, if you tell them you're a student working on a project, I couldn't tell you how many times I've used that. It opens up so many doors for you. And you technically are. I mean, it's not that you're doing it for a class, but you are a student who's working on a project while in college. So you can use that to your advantage. And I will say, it's incredible. During the summer when I was working on this, Josh and I, we would have one meeting, and then we would come back and we would debrief that one meeting that was 20 minutes for 2 hours. I mean, that's how much meat you can get out of these conversations, and that's why we're trying to really hit that home that these are super important. So the methods that you're going to go about doing this, the best is interviews. If you can meet people face to face, you can develop a relationship. It's going to be easier to ask for referrals. But some of these industry experts, they might be across the globe, or they might be way too busy to meet with some 18 or 20-year-old student. So a phone call or email is perfectly fine, or a LinkedIn message is fine. But ideally, you want to try and talk to them face-to-face or over a phone call. You can also do focus groups. So the guy from Fusion came in a couple weeks ago and talked about how every time that they are bringing about new products within their company and innovating, they do focus groups. They ask, do you guys like the food? What would you, okay, you could go down the list. So they're useful. Surveys are useful. We're going to be sending out a survey. You are our customers. So we're trying to learn as much as we can about you. And also with surveys, you can do data analysis and stuff. So this is a question that I thought of. So what if your product fails in this customer discovery phase? Well, then you're going to want to go back and start analyzing. Why did it fail? Was it the wrong features? Were you charging too much? People didn't want to pay that? Okay, then maybe you need to lower your quality a little bit or take away some features. Or maybe it was just this wasn't a big enough problem for people to say, I actually want to shell out money for this. So if all of those fail, then it's probably time to go back to that market fishbone that we created earlier and pick a new industry or pick a new use and just start this whole thing over again. And so now you see this kind of cyclical nature, and this is essentially what entrepreneurship is. You're picking something, and then you go down deep, narrow, specific knowledge, learning as much as you can about it, talking to all these customers, and you're trying to, put holes in your ship. You're trying to figure out why your product's not going to work. And the sooner you can do that, the more successful you'll be. So in conclusion, customer discovery. The goal of this is to challenge your assumption. Remember, we are business scientists. You have an idea, and without actually asking people if they want to buy it, you won't know. You'll just be all up in your head, and you're going to be one of those people who, oh, I thought of that, and then 2 years later it's implemented, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have actually executed on that. So this helps you avoid that, and customer's the only person that's going to be able to do that for you. So start some businesses.